Welcome back to the Reality Guys. I'm your host, Billy Blinks, joined as always by my co-host, Brian.
Yep.
Today is a special edition of the Reality Guys. We have no Bachelor episode this week. However, we do have a very special guest, Jamie Skaar. He was a contestant last season on Michelle's season of The Bachelorette, and he was kind enough to come on and join us and talk to us about everything with his life, a little bit of his experiences with reality TV, and whatever we come across. So, Jamie, thank you for your time, my man.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you guys.
So we're talking a lot pre-show, and obviously our main objective here is we want people to get to know you. Obviously, your experience on The Bachelorette was kind of tied up with your exit of The Bachelorette. And like I said, I think we always kind of talk about it, especially on our pre-shows and on our Bachelor reviews. It's like we don't really get to know a lot about some of these people, and they end up in these kind of crazy situations, whether you think they're genuine, not genuine. But I just kind of wanted to start with a kind of like an open floor here. Tell us about yourself a little bit, kind of what you do in real life as far as like professions, hobbies, just a little 411 on Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say probably biggest things for me, I've been in the founder entrepreneur space since 2015. So I'm on to my second company that I've launched. First one was in building biology, which just had to do with teaching individuals how to influence home health, energy efficiency. So we would do these whole home retrofits with mold mildew treatments, airflow, advanced insulation, ductless, solar panels, whole nine. And then coming into the pandemic here, we've actually focused more so on building health and wellness. So really using AI to automate indoor environments to optimize for health, wellness, performance. And so that's actually really been what I've been working on now for the last 12 months. And really addressing those issues, not only within B2B businesses, but also business consumer, renters, homeowners, really just human beings in the building.
That's really interesting too. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, a lot of the stuff, obviously you talk about wellness in a biological sense, but something that we all had to experience and have to kind of figure out our avenues. And this podcast was an avenue for us, was for your mental health and to kind of find a way to keep yourself well, because a lot of times now I think you're reliant on yourself in a lot of ways. A lot of people are isolated. A lot of people, like you said, entrepreneurial, a lot of people lost their jobs, having to kind of restart. And if you don't have a good base, I think that obviously you're really kind of starting without gasoline. So I see your post. A lot of the stuff is really interesting. So kind of got a little bit more into the personal stuff there. Obviously, you said with the pre-show, you were not a big reality TV guy, or at least as far as The Bachelor, but what was your history with reality TV? And then kind of what gave you the impetus to even apply for a reality TV show, and specifically The Bachelor?
Have like virtually no background with reality TV besides maybe like high school watching like MTV's The Challenge, Real World. But that's certainly a long way removed from now. I actually ended up on the show like complete cosmic coincidence. Like if it didn't happen the way that it happened, it never would have happened. One day my sister gives me a call and she's like, I need all your information. And I was like, why?
Oh, God.
She goes, I had a dream you're on The Bachelor. I'm signing you up. I'm like, whatever, go do your thing. And so completely unrelated, the next day, this casting agent DMs me and she's like, I'm a casting agent for a major network. We're doing a dating show. I think you'd be perfect. Left that on red because I never respond to those messages. And then the next day, I was like, hold on a second. My sister just messaged me about this. And so I told her the same thing, send her a message. She goes, hey, it's a sign. You should jump on a call with me. So we do this FaceTime call and we end up hitting it off. She ends up being super dope. And so she's like, yo, do the next interview. And so like in my mind, I'm like, hey, it'll probably help you out if I do the interview. And so she's like, great, I'm signing you up. You're doing it. And like, she's about to hang up. And I'm like, hold on a second. Like, what am I even interviewing for? And she goes, oh, it's The Bachelorette. I was like, what are the odds of that? And so, yeah, I ended up doing the interview and then another interview and another interview. And, realistically, I never actually thought that I was going to really go. Actually, even a little inside story, I didn't even officially know that I was going to be on the show until like a few hours before the initial rose ceremony.
Ooh.
There's like this long contract that we have to go through, and we ran into another snag with the contract because, running companies, I couldn't have the same restrictions.
Mhm.
And so there were some things there where they're like, we're not going to change this. And I was like, well, then I can't go. And I mean, like literally 11th hour, it was like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm going now.
Now, remind me, you didn't have a crazy, did you have one of the crazy intros?
Man, people were like, yo, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was like, no, man, I'm going to do, like, my whole mindset when I was like, hey, I'm going to do this show is that I was like, I am going to treat this like I'm going on a blind date. Like, my sister thinks that I should meet this person, so I'm just going to go on a blind date. And like, that is how I try to treat it. I was like, I'm not going to do anything extra. They're like, yo, if you met a woman and out, how would you do it? And I'm like, I would walk up and say, hi, my name is Jamie. And sure enough, was my exact intro. Hi, my name is Jamie. And, do we have conversation after that? And that's always the biggest thing.
I actually think that's really smart, like, strategy for that show. Because when people do those ridiculous things, like, you stick in their mind, but if you don't make it all the way, you kind of look like a clown. So like, I think like you being like yourself, I think is how that show should be. Like, you're like, hey, I want to get to know you. Like, this is me. And that actually it worked. Like, she was like, I like this guy. So question for you about, besides the intros, like, anybody on the show, because you were there, didn't get the shine that they should have? Because like Bill had said, like, we do a pick every who's gonna win. I picked Leroy and I never saw him on TV. So did you talk to Leroy at all? Because I'd love to know something about him, or like anybody else that.
I love Leroy. Awesome. Leroy was honestly he was honestly like one of my heroes on that show, just because his particular situation where he like didn't get a lot of time with her. Yeah. And I felt like for someone to go multiple weeks without actually having that time, I'm like, yo, the average person is going to shoot themselves in the foot, right? Like, they're going to sabotage it. And so I remember I had taken him off to the side and I told him, I said, yo, don't think about this as a timed race, right? Like, if you start thinking about it that way, like, you're not going to catch up to the amount of time that I've had. You're not going to catch up to the amount of time that the other guys have had, right? But what you should do instead is take this as an opportunity. So the opportunity that you have is to be very intentional and purposeful when you do have your moment and your time with it, right? Now, that's the type of advice you can give somebody and someone will say, yeah, and then get back in their own head about it. Leroy, though, actually went off and spent the next week and a half journaling and really becoming like intentioned. And then when he did have his time with her, like, yo, he shined and he ended up staying there for longer. So yeah, I mean, anybody who will take advice like that, apply it and benefit from it, I mean, I'm a huge fan.
So it's cool that you did have like positive experiences with a lot of the cast members and things like that. So I'm just curious now, in your post, you're recording the show world. Are you friends with anyone from your season, or have you connected with anyone else? Maybe it was like in that Bachelor Nation, or maybe even other reality TV people, maybe who like reached out to you on social media, things like that. Have you made any friends from the experience?
Yeah, I definitely have a handful of relationships that like I'll be able to leave that with. Not only within like the group of guys, but also even like the production team. Like, I mean, I was just treated first class by the producers. And then, outside of that, I mean, the amount of attention that I've gotten coming off of there, like, that opens up the door though to be able to meet all these people and have conversations that I wouldn't have had. And so I mean, across the board, it's been something that from a relationship standpoint has definitely opened up my world.
So obviously, again, we're not specific on the show, but again, you kind of mentioned this. So the reaction, and like specifically the reaction to you. And so my question really isn't about the actual like, event or the stuff. My kind of question is, do you believe that the reaction, and a lot of it was negative and kind of heightened towards you, especially like on your elimination weeks and stuff like that? Do you believe that that reaction was genuine, that all these people were genuinely, say, offended by what happened with you on the show and your questions of things and how things had gone? Or do you think it was more so like kind of just the flavor of the week? Like, oh, this is the reality TV bad guy of the week? Or have you felt like since then that like you've had a lot of like actual negative reactions towards yourself now being removed almost like a year from the season?
Oh yeah, it's even been that long. But
Well, I mean, from say you even recording and just knowing how things had gone down for you.
yeah, even the recording hasn't even been that long. But
oh wow, that's great.
I mean, I had a really interesting journey through this because I mean, I got an opportunity to really experience the full spectrum and flavor of Bachelor Nation because, you know, leading up into like the promos and everything in that kind of first episode, it was like a lot of people were like, yo, you're my favorite, you know, so I got blown up with just so much love from everybody, right? And then, you know, it kind of progresses from there. And then I have like this moment where I'm like very open and honest and vulnerable. And then, you know, like that kind of added even more to it where people are like, wow, I actually really feel for you. And whoa, I can't believe that you brought this level of vulnerability and transparency like into this environment, right? And then I'm coming in from this from a standpoint of I actually didn't even know the show had villains. I didn't know I had no idea. Like I've never even used the word villain like, since I've been an adult. And then all of a sudden it's like everything's a villain. And I'm like, I'm so confused, right? And I think, I mean, I'm looking at it as like, if you look at the context of the show, you've got all these people that are there. We are recorded 16 plus hours out of the day, right?
Oof.
So no matter what, some element of what every single person on there is edited to an extent, right? Like you're obviously not able to see everything. And then, you know, within that, it's like, you know, they kind of have to be able to tell your story too. And so they have to, you know, get things to flow in a certain way with that as well. And so I think for me, when I looked at it, it felt easy for me to look at that and say like, well, you know, there's some parts here where you can see this person's being like really, really real. And then, you know, these other parts here where all of a sudden it just seems like it's a completely different person. And for me, I kind of thought that people would see through that. But I think that I just didn't have a lot of understanding about like what the community and culture was, you know, associated with it. So, I mean, very quickly, it turned from love, 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 love to a lot of hate. And I personally, I never really experienced that. Like my circle of people, like one, I spent a lot of time in my own lane doing my own thing. Like, you know, when you're a founder entrepreneur, like that's your baby. Like it's like a child trying to put its finger in the light socket. You're just trying to keep it alive every day, right? You know, so that's really where a lot of my focus goes and a lot of my attention and energy. And then the people that are around me, you know, because I travel and I'm on the move, you don't always have the people around me don't always have the benefit of access to me. So when I am around, there's always just, you know, love, appreciation, you know, that's really been my world for a really long time now. So to like get this reaction from people, I didn't even understand it. I was like, yo, am I supposed to make a joke about this? So I think I started off just kind of like trying to crack a joke about it. Like, oh yeah, sure, of course, I'm the villain. I'm a villain. Why not? Yeah. Right? And then having no idea that I'm actually like feeding into this even more and like creating more of a frenzy just because of the fact that I'm like laughing at it. But I'm like, wait, are we taking this seriously? And you know, come to find out, like a lot of people really do take it seriously. Yeah. I would say, you know, though, the biggest impact for me is that it showed me a lot about people. It taught me a lot about just mass psychology and individuals. I think that it helped me a lot too. You know, like some of these people, there's just no filter in what it is that they'll say. And so, you know, you look at your phone and it's like someone thought of the worst, most hurtful thing they could possibly say to you. And like, those are the messages that they're sending, right? And for me, I felt like there's two avenues that I could go to address that. You know, either I could get defensive and, you know, F you, bye, that kind of thing. Or I was like, why don't I actually bring compassion and empathy and kindness to this, right? Like, I just felt like some kind of calling just gave me this feeling that like, this is a really unique opportunity where most people are never going to experience like this level of negative energy. And how can you respond to that? And I was like, yo, if I can program my mind to look at a message like that, and the first thing I think is, whoa, what's going on in your world? Like, do you need a hug? Can I contribute some way to you? Like, if I can make that my default, I'm like, yo, that's going to serve me for the rest of my life. And so, yeah, I think I am really, really, really grateful for the entire experience of going through this, because I did get an opportunity to see what the highs were like, what the lows were like, and really be able to take from that across the board.
It's so interesting. I think obviously anyone listening to this can kind of think about experiences in their own lives, whether it's within their businesses, whether it's with interpersonal relationships. I know Brian and I both individually have had similar experiences. And I think something that you really said that was interesting is that what people tend to react to more so than maybe not getting their way or having things not go the way they envision things going, or even you're doing what you would want them to do, is that you just may have a different reaction. Like you genuinely, things didn't bother you that much. You knew what you were doing, where you were. And I'm sure you apply that to everything in your life. And it's, well, in our experience, it's the most negativity we've had and the most negative interactions, whether we've had with people that are close to us or not close to us, is when you're basically not bothered by something and you are able to treat something for what it is and to appreciate when things are real or not real. And you had kind of touched on that pre-show, and it's something that I definitely wanted to kind of just pick your brain on, like your thoughts of it, because that is one thing in reality TV that people always give as a big criticism. Well, it's not real. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm sure, yeah, some of the storylines and things may be manufactured to an extent, but some of those reactions of the people and the people that are on there, what they're trying to share is real. And it's just like that in life as well. You try to share yourself as much as you can. And even if you're genuine, the reactions may not be always what someone wants. And some people really don't respond well to that. So I kind of just want to get your thoughts on kind of that idea of like real versus real, and people maybe not being more so happy with your reactions more so than like choices.
I mean, that was a challenging aspect for me. So we had talked about the fact that, hey, when I left, I had this moment of feeling like, what did I just do? Like, what did I experience that was real in all of this, right? And I think that you're completely right. There's aspects of it that you could treat as not being real, but a lot of it has to do with what your own attitude and energy is about it, right? And so, like, I'm someone who tends to be very anchored in, the realities of what are going on in my life. That's just something that's become innately a part of who I am and how I move in this world. So kind of going through that whole experience, really, it was strange because it's like, I didn't think about it necessarily from the context of the individual sitting at home watching and digesting this, right? Like I have the context of being the first person experience going through it, right? And then it's like, for me, again, I thrive off of that authenticity. Like, let's have a real conversation. Let's really dive in on things, right? So to get the reaction from people, I was never actually upset about any of the reaction that I got from everybody, because I understood it. I was like, well, based off what you saw, I totally get where you're coming from, right? There's a little bit more context to it. And it's like, but we can't really have that conversation about, hey, here's what my side of this story would be.
Jamie, I'm sorry. I can't believe that anyone would react negatively to anything that happened on your episode. This is the part where I insert the clip of me reacting.
Well, some people do get emotionally invested. So, that's part of what makes that show so great. And that's, why it's been going for as long as it has. For me, it was just getting caught up to that. And, I think I can definitely not say that I went through this whole experience and was not affected. I really have to say that it's that feeling of not knowing, feeling like what is real actually came back home with me. And I really had to work through that too, because the what's real aspect, it's a really strange thing when by the time we got to the end of this episode, I can't go a block away from my house without having people recognize me. Sure. A block. I'll go out with hood on and I will go hungover and grab some food real quick, and I'll be sitting there and are you Jamie from walking on the sidewalk, honking, people drive by and start honking at me. I'm like, what is, and again, I'm coming from, I wasn't watching this.
You had no idea.
And they don't really, no one really educates you on this. And then it's I was just thinking, hey, you'll go do this. And then if you want to, you could kind of connect with this Bachelor Nation thing. But, otherwise, I've never seen it. Like, none of my friends watch it. So I have no idea just like how big this really is, right? And then it's like you're now getting this attention from strangers and people that you don't know. And then it's, like that starts to feed into things too, where it's like, whoa, all of a sudden now your popularity is up, not only even just with strangers, but also even with your friends, right? Like, your friends know you're around now because you're the guy who was just on TV and everybody wants a photo and okay, hey, like, and so it just really started to shift and morph a lot of things. And then from there, that standpoint of, when people want to have a conversation, the only thing they can have a conversation about is what they watch from their couch, right? Which isn't necessarily like what I'm driven to talk about, because my personal experience of going through it is a lot different than what you saw on the couch. And so now I realize that I kind of ended up in this cycle of like, one, trying to figure out what this whole new world is of going from just being, head down focused in my lane, the people that know me, into you're the second most Googled person from this season, and like I can't go a block away from home, right? And then, trying to interpret that with the energy that I'm receiving from people, both positive, both negative, and everything in between. And I think that for a minute there, it really kind of left me into this space of just feeling kind of empty, because it's like, I'm feeding into this energy of this thing that isn't necessarily aligned with how I genuinely feel. Like I would love to get in and have all the conversations about here's my experience, here's what it was. Unfortunately, that just doesn't quite, fit with everything. But at the same time, like those are things that would nourish me. But to sit there and talk about just what it is that people saw or what their opinions are, it ends up being this kind of empty kind of a thing.
It sounds like, Jamie, you basically took the red pill. You were Neo, you were living your life, everything was cool. All of a sudden, one day you took the pill and there's people flying around and there's gunfights and I'm trying to be a little coy here, but it really, that's kind of the experience you're describing. Someone that, because it is such a, like I've said, even with our community, it permeates between gender and age and everything. This show is sneakily right under the skin of all pop culture. It is right there. It is not too deep of a dive to have to find people. Like you said, you don't have to go too far to find somebody that's going to recognize a contestant. Now, I mean, you were a pretty notable contestant in the last season, but that being said, still in the scheme of the world, you wouldn't think you're going to get recognized for that.
I did not. Oh man. Like, and it, like to your point on like the range, it would be like teenagers, it would be like older women, and like, and everybody in between. And like, it was just crazy. I remember one time my friend came to visit me, and so we were out and he's like, yo, what's the over under you think on people recognizing you? The over under was 2. We stopped counting after 20. It was just like, all right, we're not counting no more. Like, and that, it's just wild. Like, being here, it's like, I'm in San Diego, and
love San Diego.
I live right downtown, and so certainly being 6'3", half Norwegian, half West African, like I get noticed, but at the same time, these are people that I actually know, right? So it's just like a whole other different beast. Honestly, to your point, I think you're right when you're saying, hey, you took the red pill, because it really did open up like my understanding of just people, psychology, and just like how powerful TV is. Like, there's people that watch that and it's like, because I saw it, that is real. And that's what happened, right? And my whole thing was sitting back like, well, obviously you didn't see all of everything, right? Like, I mean, you have the time, you can tell that just looking at the scenes where it's like, someone says one thing here and then they contradict themselves in the next sequence. And you're like, you sound like an idiot. And it's like, well, obviously something's missing.
Yeah, no, definitely.
They just want the juice, so they're gonna edit it however they want. All right, Bill, should we lighten this up a little bit?
Yeah, let's segue into our other kind of stuff here.
All right, just real quick, what shows or TV or movies do you actually watch or enjoy if you do that?
I mean, I do movies for sure. Then I'll usually, if there's like a new good release out, I'll check that out. Shoot, I think I just watched like The Last Duel. Obviously, I go catch Spider-Man. I generally more so like movies where it's like I have something to kind of think about, like, oh, okay, this is like you definitely get a chance to notice from me that like, yo, I think a lot. So, I definitely enjoy like something that's original content
Yeah.
that, hey, I feel like, oh, yo, I just got introduced to something. I like that.
No, definitely something that's like immersive. Something I'm a big documentary guy myself as well, so I love anything. I just love stories, and especially when it's an actual real life story. Even a lot of times stories coming from trauma and stuff like that too, and like overcoming trauma and stuff like that. I think is always really interesting, the human spirit and stuff like that. And as in a lighter way, that is another reason why we are big fans of reality TV, because you can go from something as serious as real life trauma, but it can also people deal with it in different ways and go and able to express themselves in different ways. And for some people, it's going on competition reality TV shows. And, and some of these shows, even like a Real World or like Jersey Shore and things like that we enjoy. Everyone's had a roommate that you don't get along with. Everyone's had little squabbles. Everyone loves to go to the bars with their boys. And every so often someone gets in a fight and then you have to get mad at them for getting in the fights. And there's just something about reality TV that I think is just so leveling. And I think just like you said, it's some of the best reality TV is, to me, reminds me of some of the best fictional content too. Something that actually makes you think, and it either can be about something really profound or even just like provoking a memory. You know what I mean? And that's what reality TV does for us a lot, especially like in these relationship based shows.
I mean, I agree 100%. I think, a lot of times people are like, yo, is it scripted, not scripted, da 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 da, like, how real is it? And it's like, honestly, one, at the end of the day, what's the show there for? Is to, entertain you, right?
Yep.
So first, just be anchored to the entertainment and just enjoy that part, right? And then after that, like, it is a relationship between like, hey, you do have these people that are here to help navigate you through this experience. Yeah. And then you also have you being in that experience. But if you just left a whole bunch of people in a room and put a video there, like no one's going to tune into that. No one's going to watch that. Right. So you do need like that kind of yin and yang of it as well. I think that's a really important part of it. And those things too, like those situations, those environments, how you choose to respond in those situations tells you a lot about you. Like that's a great opportunity for you to learn about yourself. A lot of that really did happen for me. Like, I mean, I learned a lot about myself in relationships. I had discovered a pattern in myself where I could see how I had sabotaged relationships and like how that's been something that I have done for a while, and I just kind of have this like fight or flight kind of trigger that's like, hey, I got to get out of here. Like, this isn't a fit for me anymore. And then, but never really taking the time to actually dive down and be like, yo, where does that come from? Why do you all of a sudden feel like you need to get out of this situation? I mean, one of the things that I had happen when on my way home, I was like, man, my heart kind of hurts. And it was like, why? It was like, yo, well, you want to leave, but at the same time, like, how do you feel about that? And it's like, yo, well, did you want to leave because of the girl? No. Did you want to leave because of the producers? No. Do you want to leave because of the guys? No. Well, why'd you want to leave? And it's like, well, actually, I've had these things that have happened in my life in the past where I've had these women that I've cared for that I've lost. And the idea of dropping my guard and staying and being vulnerable in this situation makes me feel like I need to run. And then all of a sudden from there being like, wait a second, shit, I'm actually taking my past and projecting that right here into my present right now. And like, that no one's responsible for that but me, and I think that was just a huge lesson for me in kind of like being able to see that. One of the things that I thought was a great opportunity about going on the show, I was like, yo, anything you mess up with is going to be amplified so much. Yeah. And I'm like, you are going to learn really, really, really fast.
It's true. It's going to get magnified to the nth degree, dramatized, underlined,
overblown,
put into trailer promos.
I mean, when 1,000 people have an opinion about it and they tell you about it, like you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, and you're going to be able to sit back and be like, hey, yo, are those things that I want to repeat? Are those things that I want to change? And I know for me personally, like a lot of my relationships, the reason for a lot of my relationships ending have gone back to having issues like my mom committing suicide, like losing my aunt, losing my other aunt, losing my grandma, losing these people that I have all the matriarchs in my family. I'm literally down to the last matriarch in my entire family, you know? And so like to have that as part of my upbringing, you program things into your mind without even realizing it, right? And so one of the things that I actually realized while I was going through this is that I had programmed in my mind from my past experiences that when you drop your guard with women is when you lose them. And so then I kind of go through this thing and I'm like, wait a second, I'm fucking dropping my guard. What the fuck? What am I doing? Right. And then, you know, and then your mind is there telling you like, see, this is why you don't do that. There's another example why you don't do that. And you're like, oh no. And then, you know, it ends up becoming a completely unconscious thing. You know, one of the things that had made me feel like it gave me the confidence to put myself out there in that way. Cause again, usually I don't put myself out there with the exception of work. Like if it's a work thing and I'm doing something as a function of something, I have no problem. I'll jump up on stage, all that. But in my personal life, I'm spent a lot of time solo, like not out, right? And so one of the things that made me feel like, hey, this is a really good time for me to do this is that I had really spent the last couple of years like diving in and doing like the emotional work. And so I was like, hey, if I go do this, I'm not worried about, you know, them putting me in a situation where I get mad or anything else like that. Like y'all are not going to affect me like that. What I didn't realize though, is that when you're triggered from something in your past that was traumatic, emotions go away. It's actually the absence of feelings. So here I am trying to be like, oh, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get mad. But then, you know, you get something that's like triggering from your past. And it's like, all of a sudden I just shut down.
Yep.
Right? And that's like a completely different vibe of, I just don't want to be here anymore. Why? What happened? I don't know. It's just not for me, you know, like, and it's just like, you kind of get in that space.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, unfortunately, that's kind of like the downfall and flip side of reality TV, because just right there, Jamie, like even just a few minutes of you just talking there, we learned more about you just then than we learned about you totally on the entire show. And I understand there's only so much screen time and they're going to be, but I think knowing some of those things and that, what was that? Maybe a minute or two of you giving some real, just genuine, this is like really some tough experiences and some accountability I'm taking to my reactions. I think that would spell, you know, not only your reactions, but a lot of the reactions you see of people, not only on like The Bachelor, but these other shows. You say that you're shutting down on a show. They may say like, oh, you just don't have an answer for our questions. In reality, if they had shown and you would be able to explain some of your motivations in general in your past, people would be like, oh no, this is, you know, he's being triggered. Then you would actually have sympathy for a real person. But like you said, the unfortunate flip side of that is, to an extent, everyone on the show has to be a kind of a character, and you kind of have to play a role in their overall arc of a season. So I thought that thank you for sharing that stuff. I thought that was really, you know, that's it really, again, it helps color the lines a little bit of your character and kind of like your motivations, which, you know, makes a lot of sense.
You know, I think the biggest thing for me every single day is just that, you know, it really is just about being like the realest version of myself. You know, I always think that, like, you know, what's the point and purpose of life is literally like you are the expression or reflection of the universe trying to experience itself. Right. And so like, you only have so many days in this life to be able to get the most out of that you possibly can. And I always just think like, don't squander it. You know, like anytime that I'm not trying to get to what's the most authentic thing within myself that I'm trying to express or experience, you know, then it's taking me away from that ultimate goal. And so those are the things that I really just dial into, right? I'd rather jump in and have the vulnerable, tough conversation, reveal this aspect of myself, and like get something really meaningful from it, than to put on a show or put on some kind of presentation and give somebody a false perception. And then now I'm accountable for keeping that alive when that's not even really me.
It's really cool. No, I think that's really makes a lot of sense. So getting towards the end, but before we get to that, I want to make sure again first that you can kind of go over anything that you have going on, whether it's any like personal projects, like business stuff. Obviously I want you to be able to like plug your social media where anyone can find you if you want them to find you. Just kind of floor is yours. What's going on in Jamie's world right now?
Man, biggest thing in Jamie's world is, you know, really just Sanctuary. You know, so that's the company that I just recently founded this last year. And that has really been like my biggest passion. You know, I would really like to say, like, we talked about going through the pandemic and, you know, kind of like that mental health struggle and figuring out identity and everything else. And, you know, I was fortunate that I have a mentor, and one thing I noticed about when he would talk to me and give me advice is that he never gave me like this big grand advice or anything that was super sophisticated. It was always just like these simple principles that he had, and everything seemed to kind of come back to these principles. And so that really like opened the door up for me to be like, hey, I really should articulate like what my values and principles are and like who I really am. And I ended up doing that. And once I did that, I was like, all right, cool. Well, what do you want to do next? And I was like, you know, anything it is that I do, I want to try to have the biggest possible positive impact on the most amount of people. And really setting that as like my standard, my guiding post. That's exactly how it is that Sanctuary came to be. I ended up really diving into the actual studies and science to actually figure out about indoor environments, and came to find out that it was just, we are all being poisoned by buildings and we had no idea. Like the stats are insane. And so, yeah, this has really just been my best opportunity to be able to try to have a positive impact on that. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. You know, from there, I think everything else is just really about right now, new side on the other side of the new year. You know, I always like to really carve out that first 3 months. And I've always just been a fan of the thought process of like, what can you do in your next 90 days that'll change your next 12 months? So that's a lot of what I'm focused on right now. We're really just figuring out different ways to position the messaging in the market. You know, air quality, indoor environmental quality is like a really interesting space right now, because it's one of those things that people kind of know they need, but don't necessarily know. And yeah, I should, maybe I'll get to it. And so, you know, there's a lot of trying to figure out the messaging and everything else with it. So that's really where a lot of my time and energy has been.
Can they, people find you on social media?
Yeah, so social is my first name, last name, Jamie Skaar, JamieSkaar 24. Or you can also find me on LinkedIn. Same thing, Jamie Skaar.
Awesome. We are starting, we'll have a second show coming soon. We are restarting a new podcast. It's going to be all pop culture stuff, movies, TV. So we're going to have that going in the next few weeks. We'd love to have you back on that. That's just audio. We just kind of shoot the shit, and you know, we'll find a good release, or you know, we're friends on Instagram, so DM me anytime something good's coming out, or you just saw something you want to talk about it, man. Obviously we'll get on there and be able to share with a bunch of different kind of audiences than watch us here on the Reality Guys. But Brian, do you have anything before we go? I just had one on the way out question, but do you have anything?
Yeah, real quick, just because we're in the thick of the NFL season, I want to know if you are a sports guy.
Oh yeah, hyper competitive. I'm like super competitive. Like you'll never really know it, but like I'm definitely very, anything that has to do with competition, I'm in. I'm from Seattle, so I'm from Seattle.
Seahawks
all day.
All right, okay.
That's a cool
I like the Falcons, so we've had some battles in the playoffs. So, but you're obviously more successful than my sorry ass franchise.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like y'all just find ways to mess it up, man.
Oh yeah, dude. You don't have to tell me. I know.
I mean, like you have like one of the best franchises in football when you think all the way back to like Michael Vick, like Michael Turner, like you got Gonzalez. You guys have had some of the best players to play the game.
Yeah,
and just,
dude. Hey, you're probably a thousand person
preaching to the choir.
Now, like I hate my team more than I love them. So,
well, see,
I just was curious.
Well, that was us. We all had this similar experience. Like I said, I'm from Philadelphia, so I was a former tortured Eagles fan. We got our Super Bowl, so we talk about this all the time. I'm like the most passive sports fan now, because it's kind of like our whole identity was like angst and like I'm gonna die before I see a Super Bowl. And then we got one, and I was like 25, and I'm like, oh crap. Now I'm like, I'm good. Like, oh man.
What do you think about Jalen Hurts?
I think I like Jalen Hurts. I like his character. I like that he is athletic. I want to see them bring some people in. I'm seeing another receiver maybe in, but I got to see if he can push the ball down the field a little bit. That's the only thing. I just don't know if he's got that arm strength. There's just like a reason why he got beat out, like at Alabama. You know what I mean? There's a reason again, and I don't think that's like a thing to be like, oh, you lost out to Tua. I mean, Tua was a great college quarterback, but I haven't seen any like. He hasn't any games where he just sits in the pocket and just picks people apart. Like all of his good games are the ones where he gets these fourth quarters where he ends up running for like 100 yards, and we kind of pull these weird wins out. But I mean, I'd love to have like a you know, a Justin Herbert kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like,
he's one read Jalen. He only does one read. That's his issue.
yeah, if his first read's not there, he's taking off.
That's tough.
Which is fine, but it's just not going to work in the playoffs.
No, it's not.
Unless you pull the Colin Kaepernick when he ran all over the Packers.
Yeah. Oh man, he was like a galloping gazelle in Lambeau that year. He was. I don't like the Packers, so I was okay with that beatdown. So who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting for? Like now that like obviously you don't want the Rams or Cardinals now that they're out. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, so I'm not really that big on the Rams. I mean, I'm not like against the Rams, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel like y'all try to buy a championship, and I'm just like,
my God,
I'd rather see y'all
100%.
lose, like just because of that. I mean, Packers look nice. I just have trouble rooting for them because, like, you know, they're in the division like that, and obviously, you know, Seahawks, Packers, we've got quite a bit of history built up.
Yeah.
Man, you know, I mean, there's just no way around it. Like watching Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, like that's just always entertaining TV.
Yeah,
they're good.
But on the flip side, dude, those Bills, man,
Dude, the Bills.
they looked great, man. They stomped the Patriots.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh,
I could get away with a Super Bowl without seeing Tom Brady out there again.
100%.
yeah, please. Yeah, we're all sick. I mean, you're talking to a Falcons and Eagles fan. We're sick. We're all sick of Brady. We're all sick of Brady. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I think
great.
you know the Rams definitely have a good shot. Packers obviously have a good shot, and I think you know your Bills and Kansas City. If I'm gonna go final for it, honestly, man, I really see the Packers over the Rams.
Ugh.
I do see that.
All right. I mean, it's probably gonna happen. They've had an easier road.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, I think the real interesting one would be, you know, what does that look like, Bills, Kansas City?
Yeah.
The Bills have a really good defense too.
They do.
Yeah.
And they're going to play that game in
Aren't they
Buffalo.
ranked, like, first in like 8 or 9 different categories.
Yeah, they're pretty good. And it's
Yeah,
cold,
they're
man.
really
That if it snows, and then you got the dildos flying everywhere. Like I don't know. It's as long as Tom doesn't win, or as long as the Packers or the Bucks don't win, I don't care who wins.
No, I don't. So I mean, my last thing is like, you know, we're in the winter months here. You know, we're East Coast, so we're kind of dealing with the thick of it right now. It's been snowing, but do you have any recommendations on a good place to go for spring break? I heard Pacific Beach is nice.
Oh man, well, I mean, down here in San Diego, PB definitely that's party central. Downtown is always fun too. It just depends upon the vibe and flavor that you want. You know, like PB's a little bit of a younger crowd. Downtown, it's a little bit older. But honestly, though, spring break, I'm hopping a flight to Colombia, so I'm gonna be a
good man, Medellin.
Medellin, yes, Medellin.
Smart man.
Oh, I love that. I love Medellin. Medellin, Cartagena. I mean, shoot, you can go rent a yacht out there and bounce between the islands for nothing. Like,
well, listen, my man, this has been like an awesome conversation. You're a ton of fun, awesome, insightful. Like I said, we definitely want to have you back on the other podcast, and then maybe eventually we'll prod you into watching an episode of some random reality TV and come just react to it with us and just have fun and be an audience member.
I would do that just because it's you guys.
I appreciate that. Everyone, make sure to we made friends. We did it. Started from me crying at the screen, and now we're here. Everybody, please make sure to check out Jamie's stuff. I'm friends with him on Instagram. Follow his stuff. He always has awesome posts. I always check out all the wellness stuff and especially the indoor stuff. Brian and I both just bought houses, so I'm very about checking in my like ducks and things like that. I'm working on all that, so I'm definitely gonna be checking into your stuff more. Everybody, please do
go to the site. So we actually have this entire it's proprietary, no one else has it, but it's a 7-minute quiz. Cool. And it'll actually aggregate a home health score for you. And then every single one of your answers actually tags into the medical study that tells you the impact of that thing that you do in your house.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it will give you an entire blueprint for how you can make your home healthier.
Okay, awesome. What's the website?
Sanctuaire.bio.
Okay.
So SANCTU and then AIRE, AIRE.
Cool. I'll put the link in the episode description and stuff like that. But for everyone, for myself, Brian, and a special thank you to Jamie.
Yeah, thanks,
Peace.
Jamie.